At this point in the offseason, the trade bug has likely hit your dynasty leagues because we're far enough into the offseason where your managers are itching to make trades. Rookie picks matter now more than ever, so we're going to talk about 6 different players that you should be looking to deal to acquire rookie picks in the upcoming draft of this offseason. And surprisingly enough, we're going to talk about a handful of guys here that you might say are still young and you're not ready to part ways with to acquire rookie picks, but I think we're going to give you some pretty convincing reasons as to why you should part ways with them at this point in their career. Now, Cameron, your first guy, I wouldn't exactly call him a young gun in terms of his dynasty outlook here for the next few years, but who's your first player that you want to talk about that you deal for rookie picks?
Yeah, it's Josh Jacobs, and he just turned 27 years old. And I do think it's important to start with, I understand if you're a contender right now and he's your best running back, maybe you're not listening here, right?
Sure.
Your team might be exempt from trading him because you do need to push all the chips on the table, right? You do need to go all in. But unless you're that team, even if you have other running backs, then maybe I look to trade him, because at 27 years old, just seeing 300 plus attempts for the second time in his career, seeing 15 touchdowns, the third highest yards per reception among top 20 fantasy running backs. It was his highest of his career by 1.5 yards. I just don't know if we're going to see better from Josh Jacobs. I feel like we've kind of hit the peak. And, we kind of saw this 2 years ago. We saw it fall off a little bit. Obviously, injuries played into that. But you look at the Packers as a whole, they completely relied on running the ball this year. They had only 479 pass attempts, which was the third lowest in the NFL, compared to 581 last season, which was the 8th most, right? So they saw over 100 more pass attempts last year. And I understand, obviously, you didn't have Josh Jacobs last year. You had A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, who were kind of battling with injuries. But with Jordan Love, with the prospect of most likely bringing in an actual wide receiver one, not one of the 4 that they try to pretend were wide receiver ones, I think they're going to start to rely a little bit more on the pass. 15 touchdowns is not something you're going to bank on. And if he, his 27 years old, next year turns 28 and has a little bit of a down season, your trade window has really started to close quickly, right? What you can get for Josh Jacobs has really started to close. And so that's really what it is. It's, you would, especially with running backs, would rather be a year early than a year late.
Yeah.
And if I'm trading Josh Jacobs, I'm looking at the 104, the 105, hoping to get one of those running backs, Travion Henderson or Marion Hampton right now. I really like in that area. We talked about both of them on our episode last week, Ty and I did. And, because just to replenish that, I think both could have immediate impact. Luther Burden, definitely another guy that is going to be in that range. And I really think that, I don't know. I just think that we're reaching the pinnacle of what Josh Jacobs is going to be at. So especially if you're rebuilding, I don't see any reason he should be on your team. And I think that's where you push it in, especially if you already got a high draft pick, go get another one.
Yeah, that's the golden question you have to ask with Josh Jacobs, I think, is can you live in a 1-for-1 swap? Because when you look at the public's perception, again, we use keep trade cut solely for public reception. We're not saying it's like the end all be all. It's the golden rule to follow, the golden standard to follow. But when you're looking at Josh Jacobs, I mean, he's in the same range, just behind Travion Henderson. Amari Hampton's a little bit further ahead. Like, can you live with a 1-for-1? I don't want to call it a downgrade, but can you live with that, right? Going from Josh Jacobs to one of those guys, basically straight up, is what you're looking at. And that's a tough one for me, because on the one hand, I think we do get, again, when we're looking in 3-year windows in dynasty formats, I think we could get another potentially 2 solid seasons from Josh Jacobs. But again, how close to the sun do you really want to fly with the time you have left on Josh Jacobs? And Ty, you're kind of nodding in agreement on that.
No, 1000%. And like, this is a perfect time to move on from Josh Jacobs, because people were somewhat down on him going into last year just because of the usage that he got in Vegas. And then you saw the big year in Green Bay and you're like, well, he's going to be like that from, as long as he's in Green Bay. So you're selling now at where his price has gone up now. And again, if you're a team that has Josh Jacobs and really no one else, and like you're just clinging on to the guys that are producing for you and you're just sneaking into the playoffs every single year, this is the time to just rip the Band-Aid, move on, and just commit to going youth. Because like Cam said, also, some of these guys that you can get in return for Josh Jacobs, right, the guys that you would use with these draft picks, they can be year one contributors right away.
It's going to depend on where they end up, though, too. And that's going to be the most fascinating thing with this running back class, because this is a really, really good incoming running back class. That is no secret whatsoever. It's can you live with going from Josh Jacobs, who, I mean, he's going to be ranked as a consensus top 10 back, no question, next year. Can you live with downgrading from that in the foreseeable future to taking a shot on a Marion Hampton, a Travion Henderson, potentially as far down as Quinton Judkins, depending on which pick you get? That's the golden question. And I'm not here to tell you that, yes, you should be able to live with that. It truly does depend on the state of your team, which, Cameron, to maybe put a bow on it, you kind of were hinting at the start of your spiel.
Yeah, and I think too, it just is like you got to look at that. And I'm not saying he's a must sell.
Totally,
I'm saying if you can get the 105, and I do want to say we're talking super flex picks right here. I'm saying the 105 in a super flex. If you're not in a super flex, move that up, say probably the 104. But the 105 is probably the lowest I'm going for Josh Jacobs. I'm going to take higher than that, right? Hit 105 or higher. Obviously, if you can go out and trade Josh Jacobs for the 101 in your league,
totally,
go do it. Obviously, go. Do not limit yourself to the 104 either. But yeah, I just see he was the running back 8 in points per game this year, which is great. But on 300 carries and 15 touchdowns at 27 years old, it's, you go back and forth. And like you said, you probably get 2 more good years. And that's what you use to sell Josh Jacobs to the next person.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think back to our Dynasty League where I did this similarly with Saquon Barkley, right? Mm-hmm. Where, and look, Saquon Barkley, what has it been, 2 years since I've sold him? Like,
yep.
2 years, he's overall running back 1. But in that meantime, I've won 2 championships because I bailed while he was on the New York Giants still. So again, it's the game we play in Dynasty, right? You have to look in 2-3 year windows and call your shots. And we're in this 2-3 year window with Josh Jacobs of, you can fly dangerously close to the sun if you want to, but it's not the worst time to get out with a running back class this deep and this talented. Ty, I'll kick it over to you here because you're going to stick with the running back position. You're going to take a guy who's a little bit younger as well.
Yeah, a little bit younger and arguably on a better offense too. It's James Cook. Yes, he's a 25-year-old lead running back on the second highest scoring offense in the league. I fully understand that in just last year alone, he was the running back 7. I get all of it. But he's the perfect guy to sell with this incoming running back class. And heck, even if you need a wide receiver, he's the perfect guy to sell, because let's call a spade. This was an insanely efficient year for James Cook. He was the running back 22 in usage per game, according to Fantasy Points data. He was tied with Derrick Henry and Jahmyr Gibbs for the most rushing touchdowns this year with 16, while being 12th in yards before contact per attempt. So again, like we talk about yards after contact per attempt, we like that because it shows that it doesn't matter, how many carries a guy can get. He's going to break, a big run off because he can make people miss. James Cook was able to get a ton of yards before even getting contact. He was second in percentage of carries that went for a touchdown this year. His touchdown rate, second highest again, insanely high because again, 16 rushing touchdowns helps. He was 9th in yards per carry of all running backs with at least 50 carries. The cherry on top for all of this is that he had less receiving work than he did in 2023 by 12 catches and 16 targets. So I'm okay getting out early, as I said, for one of these rookie running backs, because, again, with the super flex pick, you can get like an even swap for a mid first round pick, or you could do like a late first and get another piece in return. You can potentially get like a Travion Henderson. You can, again, you go late first or early second, you put yourself in a position for like a Quinton Judkins or a Caleb Johnson and another piece in return. So again, it sounds counterintuitive that you're going to sell the lead back on one of the highest scoring offenses when he's still in his youth. I'm predicting just a comeback down to earth year for James Cook, with the potential that he has too, that who knows, Buffalo can take another running back and that it's a split backfield.
Is James Cook more likely to score 2 touchdowns or 16 touchdowns again next year? Question for the panel.
That's man, I don't like either of those answers. I'm gonna
Right.
be honest. But I will say probably 2, especially they have Ray Davis there, right? They want to continue to give him the ball. He only had 207 carries this year. That's the other thing. Every running back with over 13 rushing touchdowns had 250 plus carries, except for James Cook, who had 207. So it's just like Ty said, I just think everything went perfectly for him, that he's going to come back down to earth a little bit. Does that mean he's also not a top 15 running back? No, it's just the efficiency that we saw probably isn't going to be there again.
And this is the class to do it. Again, if you're gonna take another dart throw on a running back, I mean, again, when James Cook came out, he was going at what, the 1-2 turn, and like you've gotten your return on James Cook off of this year alone, basically. If you're looking to replenish the running back position, hit the reset button, because I mean, it's going to be a regression year for James Cook. There's no question about it. But how big is the regression? And then let's say James Cook doesn't stay with the Buffalo Bills after his rookie contract is up. What then? He's not the same level of talent as a Josh Jacobs, as a Saquon Barkley, as a Derrick Henry, who can go to a new team and absolutely dominate and feast. I'll throw Joe Mixon in there on the Houston Texans, right? Like, I don't think James Cook is quite that level of talent. So then what do you do afterwards, right? Let's just hit the reset button. Let's get another 4 years with any of these running backs that you mentioned, Ty. Anything you want to add before we put a bow here? Because, I mean, again, we're all kind of in agreement here. This is all about regression, maximizing your value, and just hitting the reset button while you can. Again, get out 2 years early rather than 2 years too late.
Right. James Cook, again, because he is, going into year 4, you can even entertain the possibility of packaging him and going for a higher draft pick if you really want to, right? Like, that's the beauty of James Cook, is that like you have a lot of flexibility in where you want to target like your draft capital to come from.
Before we go any further, we're going to switch up positions here. Want to make sure that I talk to the majority of you out there who haven't yet subscribed to our channel, yet watch our content. Hey, look, I know you're out there, all right? We get a sneak peek at the metrics, all right? Make sure you're subscribed to the fellowship here. Turn on that notification bell as well, so you know when all of our newest episodes are up. This is a really fun time of the year because we have a great stretch of episodes coming up where it's all like themed weeks, right? Like this week, we're talking about players you should trade for picks you should trade for players. We're going to get into rookie comps eventually. It's just a fun time of the year where we're getting knee deep into the Dynasty content. So make sure you're along for the ride. Hit that notification bell, hit that subscribe button. Promise you will love following along with our content all off season long. We're literally 3 dudes who love fantasy football, just want to talk fantasy football all the time, and we'd love to have you along on the journey. I want to talk about CJ Stroud. We are talking about super flex leagues here, and CJ Stroud, to me, the value that people still hold on to CJ Stroud with, I think, is still kind of mind-blowing for me in a way. He is a good NFL quarterback, and he will certainly have better seasons in his 2024 campaign. But again, we're looking in 2-3 year windows here when it comes to dynasty leagues. And Stroud, unfortunately, took a step backwards from his 2023 campaign. He threw for nearly 400 less yards. He threw 7 more interceptions. He threw 3 less touchdowns. His passer rate dipped from 100.8, to 87 this last year, despite playing 2 more games than his rookie campaign. Now, that's not all his fault. Bobby Slowick and his offensive line really didn't do him any favors, right? I mean, Stroud was pressured on 38% of his dropbacks. He took the second most sacks in the league this year at 52 sacks. And the team, because of that, then was 22nd in EPA per dropback. So the Texans, to hopefully fix this, right? They part ways with Bobby Slowick. They bring in first-time play caller Nick Caley, who was the passing game coordinator for the Rams last year. So that automatically leaves room for some optimism, right? Because we always give Sean McVay disciples the benefit of the doubt. And like I said earlier, Stroud's going to have better seasons in his 2024 campaign. But Stephon Diggs is a free agent. Tank Dell probably won't even play football in 2025 just because of how gruesome his leg injury was towards the end of last season. And you look at Stroud's value on Keep Trade Cut. This is mind-blowing to me. He's only 4 spots behind Ashton Genty at the 18th overall player in Superflex leagues, according to the public. He's 13 spots ahead of Ted McMillan. That means you can get the 101 or the 102 straight up for CJ Stroud. Right, that's what we're talking about. That's a no-brainer to me. Are you kidding me? I'm not saying CJ Stroud is going to be stuck in, the quarterback 20s land forever. But if I can go out and flip CJ Stroud, if I have if I took a Bo Nix last year, if I have a Drake May waiting in the wings, if I have a guy that I can scoot by with as my quarterback 2 for the next year, shoot, I am okay flipping CJ Stroud for one of those two guys. Or you know what? This is also something I really like. If you want to go out and trade CJ Stroud for Dak Prescott, who everybody hates right now for whatever reason, if you want to go out and trade CJ Stroud for Dak Prescott and a mid-first round pick this year, which, go ahead, again, keep trade cut is not the golden standard here we're trying to live by, but plug it into the calculator, comes out pretty even. If you can get CJ Stroud for Dak Prescott and a mid-late first-round pick to pick up one of these running backs, to pick up an Emeka Egbuka, oh my gosh, all day, every day. The CJ Stroud is such an easy one to go capitalize on for rookie picks right now. He's young enough. The ceiling is still high enough, but I just don't think the 3-year window gives me enough confidence to not capitalize on his value with this class.
Yeah, you look at it. He would have been the 53rd highest scoring flex player last year. He would have been wide receiver 31 and running back 21, tight end 4. So the argument that, he's a quarterback, he's way more valuable, he's going to score more points, goes out the window. There were 53 other guys who weren't quarterbacks who scored more points than him. Obviously, like you said, are we expecting this to happen again? No. But now you know it's in the range of outcomes. Now you know that there's a possibility. Let's say he has 4,400 yards, 35 passing touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Let's say he scores another 4 rushing touchdowns on the ground, has his rushing yards stay the same. He would do what Sam Darnold just did this season.
Yeah.
And you want to know what? Sam Darnold was the QB 11 in points per game with that stat line. He had 4,500 yards and 35 passing touchdowns. He was the quarterback 11. So it's just, when you don't have the rushing upside, you have to have what Joe Burrow just did, where he had 4,900 yards and 43 touchdowns to crack the top 5. Like that, those are ridiculous stats that you're just not going to rely on every single year from CJ Stroud, especially because we haven't seen it. It's different if you're going in on like Joe Burrow, because we've seen it now. We haven't even seen it yet, so you can't even say it's going to happen consistently. Like, look at Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes doesn't even do it consistently. And so that's just where, I agree. I loved what Ty said too last time and you were talking about it. Like, this is a perfect draft yes, you could get the 101. If you can get the 101, great.
Oh, yeah.
But to get the 108 and get a second, and maybe something right and something else, like getting multiple things, because the second round, you're still going to have a lot of running backs, some wide receivers who are going to be very productive for fantasy. So you can turn that into multiple young players. Obviously, if you can get that super high pick that you want, go get that pick. But if you have to go later first round and you end up with, like Caleb Johnson and then another second round pick, it's like, I'm going to be pretty happy with that as well.
Yeah, I don't hate getting multiple pieces back for CJ Stroud. I'm sorry. I want to clean up the Dak Prescott thing, and then Ty, I want to get your thoughts too, because I realize I throw out Dak Prescott and people are going to say, he's going to be 32 years old, basically, right? 30.
Get out of here.
Only going to be 32 going into the next season. 3-year window with CeeDee Lamb. What more do we want?
I know.
I just want to clean that up. That's my reasoning there of like, I think we're just hating Dak Prescott for no reason at all, when we've seen Dak can be a perfectly capable fantasy quarterback with a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. Ty, where are you at on CJ Stroud?
I think the best way to look at Stroud is just, again, like you look at a ranking like Keep Trade Cut that has him as the QB 10 in Superflex, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's not being valued as he was coming off of his rookie year, right? No. But if you think that CJ Stroud can get back to like his rookie year, tell your friends, put it in the comments what it's going to take for him to throw for more than 400 yards, to not throw 7 more interceptions like he did this year, 3 more touchdowns in his rookie year. Like, we have a mountain to climb when it comes to CJ Stroud, and being able to be, a truly like game-changing quarterback. Like Cam had said too, like there's no rushing upside. So the deck is already stacked against him in that sense. So we're not saying that like it's impossible, like because again, we've been talking about like the 2-3 year windows. But at the same time, like tell me how this situation, can get better for me to believe that like CJ Stroud is worth holding on to instead of reinvesting back with some draft capital.
I mean, with no rushing upside, again, Cameron, you touched on it. Like 4,500 yards and 40 touchdowns is what you need.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I pointed out the start of the year, there's only 4 quarterbacks that have done that over the last 6 years. And I think it was even only 3 quarterbacks. And, Tom Brady and Matt Stafford were 2 of them. And granted, both older guys, but both have struggled to get back to that stratosphere of, being a top 10 quarterback. So it's just tough to see the path forward there for CJ Stroud. We all love Nico Collins. Nico Collins is phenomenal. He has proven himself as one of the elite S-tier wide receivers in the NFL. But again, when I can get that with Dak Prescott and pick up a Luther Burden and Amari and Hampton along the way, please and thank you. I'll take that every single time if I can pick up a young stud in the process. So we'll take a quick break here, fellas. We cover three players here. We'll cover 3 on the back end as well. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back. 3 players down that you should be trading for rookie picks this year: Josh Jacobs, James Cook, and CJ Stroud. We have not touched on the wide receivers yet, but don't you worry. We've got 3 wide receivers here on the back end that you should be looking to trade for rookie picks as well. All within the same age range, if we're really looking at it. And Cameron, I'll start with you here because this player was in my consideration of players to add to the list. So I'm glad somebody's talking about him because he's probably the most polarizing player we're going to talk about on the back half here.
Yeah, I mean, it's Jameson Williams. And I understand the big games, the big boom. He was exciting at the beginning of the season. But he's had 7 games this year inside the top 20, 7 games outside the top 30, 5 games inside the top 10, or 4 games inside the top 10, 5 games outside the top 40, right? It is win you of the week, lose you of the week. I mean, it's that back and forth. And now we take away Ben Johnson, right? I mean, there are so many mouths to feed in this offense that it's not going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's not going to be Jahmyr Gibbs. So is it going to be David Montgomery? Is it going to be Sam Laporta? Is it going to be Jameson Williams? Is it going to be all 3 of them? Yeah, right. You don't know. So you're playing a little bit of that roulette on top of a player who you were already playing roulette with week to week. So that for me, it's just like, I just don't see the crazy upside. You talk about volume. That's not Jameson Williams' game. He only had 1 game over 6 receptions the entire season. He was wide receiver 40 in targets on the year. He had 7 more targets this season than Xavier Leggetti. Leggetti Spaghetti only had 7 less targets than him this year. That's insanity, right? And so it's just, I just get worried that you're going to see so much of the same, and I just don't think he's going to transition to be that consistent player. I think this is who Jameson Williams is. I think he is very important for the Detroit Lions because he gives them that deep threat. But from fantasy, I don't want to play that game. And I don't want to play for the rest of his career and also be risking that Ben Johnson leaving means Sam Laporta is the clear wide receiver 2 in this offense. Jahmyr Gibbs is a clear 3. And all of a sudden you got JMO at 4 and you're just playing that game. And the fact that he's in that 105, 106 range that we kind of keep talking about is absolutely ridiculous. Like the fact that I could trade him right now and go get Luther Burden. No, I'm sorry. Right. If I go get a Mecca, I'm sorry. I'm going to do it. If I can get Quinn, even if like I can trade him later and I can go get that 110 and 111. I can get Quinshawn at the 110 and then pick up a second as well. I'm going to do that all day, every day right now. I don't even think I have to hesitate on any of those offers for Jameson Williams.
Yeah. The question is, do you think John Morton can scheme Jameson Williams open the way Ben Johnson was able to? And now John Morton did serve as the Lions senior offensive assistant back in 2022. Left for Denver for a few years to be their pass game coordinator, which, hey, you know what? Credit to John Morton, did some great things with Bo Nix this last year in that offense, but that's the golden question. Do you think John Morton can scheme open Jameson Williams, give him all these unique touches, these crossing routes over the middle, let him get to work instead of just being a deep threat guy? Do you think John Morton can scheme him open to even a similar level that Ben Johnson can? Which, Ty, I asked that question, you instantly kind of got the stink face of like, yeah, I don't think so.
I would love to see just how many people are in on year 4 Jameson Williams with a new offensive coordinator, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with Jameson Williams, a player, but it's understanding when someone is being projected to take another step when we are saying we don't see that step happening. Like, again, like, I should say step is subjective because like he could, get like 5 more targets and 6 more catches, and that's a step forward, right? But like we're saying, like, yeah, again, like being valued ahead of guys like Luther Burden, ahead of an Emeka Ibuka, where you're on the fringe of being a top 24 wide receiver in dynasty formats, according to Keep Trade Cut. I don't see that happening. So again, he's 24, so like that's probably why he's pushed up the board, push up rankings a bit. But again, it's just understanding, okay, what needs to happen for him to take that step forward. And when you look at the situation, like you said, came at the top, you got David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs in the backfield with their offensive line. Then you've got Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown with, dare I recklessly speculate, the possibility that they bring in a true number 3 guy like a Cooper Kupp or somebody else like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just in the realm of possibility, and that severely dampens Jameson Williams' outlook then.
You either love Jameson Williams and want to keep riding his 2024 campaign, or again, and I think we're all in consensus here, we're good moving off of JMO if it means you get a Luther Burden or an Emeka in the first round this year. I'm perfectly fine changing to one of those two and throwing that dart because you're throwing a dart during the season too, right? Cameron, you pointed that out. Is it the week you went to the week, or is it the week that he tanks your lineup and you wish you would have started, the random week Michael Pittman goes off in your lineup, right? That not many of those weeks. Josh Downs is probably the better player to throw in there, but point stands, right? I'd much rather just throw the dart on a Luther Burden or a Emeka than roll the dice on Jameson Williams another year. Anything you want to put a bow on this, Cameron?
Yeah, if you're like, I don't know how much worse the Lions offense is going to get. Last season, they were 8th in completions. They were 1st in completion percentage. They were 2nd in passing yards. They were 2nd in yards per attempt. They were 1st in touchdowns as a team with 70. Bills were 2nd with 65. Just so you're aware, there were teams last season who had 29 touchdowns. The Cleveland Browns had 29 on the season, and Detroit scored 70. All right, so that just puts it into perspective. We thought the Bengals scored a lot. They had 57. So the Lions scored almost a touchdown more per game. So there's so much regression that could happen with this offense that's really, really what just is scaring me off of JMO. Yeah,
and I love putting the bow on the team perspective, not the player perspective, because this is nothing against JMO the prospect. Mm-hmm. I so badly wanted to see JMO thrive coming out of college after suffering an ACL coming into the draft. I wanted to see him bounce back and have this kind of a season. I think this is less about the Jameson Williams regression and far more about the team regression. Realizing they might have been at the pinnacle last year, still couldn't get it done. So how does that impact Jameson Williams moving forward? I think that is a perfect bow to put on this discussion. Ty, I'll come to you because you're going to talk about another wide receiver who, again, situation is looking a little bit murky here.
Murky, I think, is just a nice way to put it. I'll be completely honest. It's George Pickens, and producer Jackson's probably not a big fan of me dissecting this Pittsburgh situation, but look, like, I'm a big fan of George Pickens' talent. I think you guys are as well, for his size and his athleticism, the speed, the catch radius, all of it stuff. Like, you love the player that is George Pickens, but his situation is just not going to do him any favors whatsoever, right? Arthur Smith is still the offensive coordinator and play caller in Pittsburgh. Now, like, there were some good moments in Pittsburgh with that offense, but it's not consistent enough for our liking, at least. You also now add in major question marks about the quarterback situation. Do they draft one? Right? You're talking about like a Jackson Dart. If you're going to reach on him in like round 1, maybe he falls to you in round 2. Otherwise, you're looking at like a Will Howard in round 3. Like, none of the rookies give me a ton of confidence for George Pickens. They could re-sign Russ or Justin Fields. Well, I know what we got from that last year. It was not my cup of tea, not my flavor by any means. You could go into free agency and sign a Sam Darnold to a massive contract. You could do a bridge quarterback with like Jameis for a year, whatever it may be. But whichever way they go, I don't think it's going to be better than what happened last year with Russ and Fields. And then the third piece of this is that there's a big potential that Pittsburgh brings in another top-end weapon to play opposite George Pickens instead of relying on the Calvin Austins of the world or the Van Jeffersons of the world, right? According to Keep Trade Cut, you can get an even swap for a late first, early second. I would even look to go as low as a mid-second to get another piece in that package as well for Pickens. And if you did like a mid-second, you could be looking at a Cam Scadaboo. You could be looking at an Elick Yeomanor from Stanford, or the next. I almost spoiled our wide receiver comp for Mr. Trey Harris.
The next Randy Namath, baby.
No, boy. We don't mean that. We need to put that up
Ty
there real quick.
I said
it. Again, with George Pickens, tell me how his situation can get better, and maybe I'll change my mind on moving him as again, if I were a George Pickens manager and I see an offer come in that's the 111 in my 12-man super flex league, I'm going to hit accept, because again, I just don't see how I don't see how it gets better even within a 3-year window for George Pickens in Pittsburgh.
So again, I do think George Pickens probably has the murkiest, again, to use the same word, 3-year window out of this group of guys that we're talking about here. So I get where the 111 seems appealing. I think you could probably even do a little bit better than the 111. I think you could probably weasel your way up to the 108, 109 if you really had to with George Pickens. Right? Yeah, no, sign me up. I'm with you on that. I have nothing that could convince you that his situation is going to get better, Ty. So I'm going to let Cameron provide his thoughts to see if he has any theories of how the Steelers situation can get better.
No, not at all. He went from 2023, the team had 3,300 passing yards and 13 passing touchdowns. He was a wide receiver 29 with 1,100 yards and 63 receptions. This season, they have 3,600 passing yards and 21 passing touchdowns. Huge improvement under Arthur Smith. I mean, obviously the reason he should be getting head coaching interviews. And then all of a sudden, George Pickens has only 59 receptions, 900 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And it's the wide receiver 40. He regressed when the team, got objectively better. I just don't see like crazy improvements unless they make a big splash deal for Matthew Stafford. But even then, with George Pickens, I don't look at George Pickens and go, he is consistently a wide receiver 2 on my team. I don't care who the quarterback is. I'm never going to look at George Pickens and go, he is consistently going to be a great wide receiver 2 that I can plug and play. And so if you're getting a first round pick for a guy, I want him to have that in his range of outcomes, right? If I'm going to hold on to him. So I agree. I'd push the boat out, right? Viking goodbye. Like, all right, bye Pickens. Give me the my first.
Oh, gee.
That's just where I'm at.
Viking funeral. Jeez.
I don't know why.
Football.
I don't know why that was the image that came into my head. I was just like, I was thinking like push it. Now I'm like realizing I don't mean fiery death. I just mean like, yeah, ooh, that was rough.
Oh,
Too bad we don't have producer Jackson here. We'll blame him for that one. That's made in the final cut.
oh man. I don't have much to add to this because as much as I love George Pickens in town, here's what I will ask though. Because I don't know if I'm willing to maybe be as harsh as you both are in terms of what rookie pick I get in return. So how low of a rookie pick are you willing to take for George Pickens?
I
You
said
throw out the 111
package.
Okay.
Well, like
in a package. Okay, but like straight up.
Just
Someone
straight up.
someone sends you like 202 for George Pickens. You take that?
Probably not. I feel like the 111 would probably be the lowest, and then like just a 1-for-1 that I would
Sure.
take.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd say 112. Just got to have a 1 in front of it.
Just as long as a pick is a first round pick.
Right. I would
If you were to get
probably
any first round pick,
personally, I'd probably say the 202. But if it has a 2 in front of it and you do a 1-for-1, your league's gonna make fun of you. So I'd probably go to 1 because then you get a little right. They're not making fun of you. Then. So
they better give you a fourth round sprinkle on top.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, and you can't get by with like the 14th pick is like the very very late first round. No.
100%.
It's got to be a 1 in the front.
202 in cash considerations. All right, there we go. Deal.
Give me some fab money. That's what I'm talking about.
I mean, you can make some fab on that. You can make that worthwhile. I only asked that because again, like I think realistically, you could probably push your way up to the 108, 109, straight up for George Pickens. So if someone is forcing you to settle on the 110, 111, two of us here are a fan of that. I would rather potentially hold my cards on Pickens at the 111.
I mean, you can try to go for a higher pick. I'm not against it.
No, yeah,
at all.
And I'm not saying you are. I'm saying I don't know if I'm 100% ready to settle on that. I think that one would have to be a draft day decision for me to see who falls to the board and what my team needs are based on that. So go ahead.
You get Tyler Warren at the 109 or George Pickens.
That one depends on my team. I'd probably
Tyler Warren, baby.
Okay, but where is Harold Fannin going?
Oh,
don't talk about Harold Fannin, Tyler.
Oh no! On.
Oh no!
This George Pickens. We are done talking about George Pickens. Talk about your receiver. We are not.
What if Harold Fannin is a Raider? Then are you in on him?
Yeah.
Oh my!
3 tight end sets.
Yes.
Get Michael Mayer out there too.
Yes.
Look, okay, I'll move on. We're having a little bit too much fun with that. I'll move on to wrap out the show here. Zay Flowers is the last guy to go ahead and trade for rookie picks. I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. I know. We can just cut it there because if you've been watching our content here for a while, we are very clearly out on Zay Flowers. And again, this has nothing to do with Zay Flowers' talent. I like Zay Flowers, the player. The problem is that in Lamar Jackson's MVP caliber season this past year, where I don't know, we're not going to get into who should have won the MVP. You still only got the wide receiver 36 in fantasy points per game from Zay Flowers, and you still got little to no new knowledge on what his role actually is in the passing game and how Todd Monken wants to utilize him. Through the first 8 weeks of the season, you got 7.6 targets per game. He was 10th in target share, which was great, but then over the last 9 weeks, you only got 6 targets per game, and he was 28th in target share. And believe it or not, that was correlated with giving Derrick Henry or increasing Derrick Henry's touches from 18 per game through the first 8 weeks to averaging 20 touches per game over the final 9 weeks. So, like, if we're going to sit here and wait for a JSN kind of leap from Zay, which is, I think that's kind of the game people are playing. They're waiting for this JSN level breakout from Zay Flowers. I don't think we're going to get it because I don't think this offense can breed it. Simple as that. Unless this team flips its identity on its head to become less run centric, I just don't see how we're going to get anything better than a low-end wide receiver 2 season from Zay. So if you can field any pick from the 103 to the 107, if you can get a Luther Burden or an Emeka Egbuka, right? Gladly, I'll just throw a dart on one of those guys because I'm not getting any high ceiling potential from Zay Flowers here. I'll throw a dart on one of those two guys because at worst, I think they could just kind of replicate what Zay Flowers is giving you from a fantasy production perspective. Or, you know what? If you just need a running back, I mean, again, it's any of these running backs. It's Amarian Hampton, it's Travion Henderson, it's Quinton Judkins, it's Caleb John. It's any of those four. So really, look, we can expand that to the 108 even if we really want to. Shoot, if you need a quarterback, you want to take a shot on Cam Ward. I mean, your options are endless there with those picks. And frankly, I'm willing to part ways with Zay Flowers to get one of those guys because I still don't know what they want him to do in this offense. And it's not breeding fantasy success for me right now. Simple as that. Let's just take a shot on a new guy because I'm already taking a shot on Zay Flowers, it feels like this year.
Yeah. I mean, Lamar Jackson just had an MVP season. I'm not going to say who I think the MVP should be, but Lamar Jackson did have an MVP season where he put up a career high in touchdowns, a career high in yards. And Zay Flowers still averaged 12.2 fantasy points per game in PPR formats. He is, for me, all intents and purposes, view him the same as you view Josh Downs. And if you don't like that, Josh Downs just averaged a point more per game this season, with Anthony Richardson averaging 55% completion percentage than Zay Flowers. Josh Downs had 13.1 fantasy points per game. Zay Flowers had 12.2. That's all I'm saying is that they have the same upside right now because of the way their offenses run. And unless you expect Lamar to continue to put up 4,241 over and over and over again, I just don't see it. And I could see it getting worse than what we saw this season. So yeah,
that's scary.
I'm fully good moving off of Zay Flowers. Ty, you look like I just misspoke and dropped the wrong stat.
Well, it just boggles my mind that Travis Etienne for Josh Downs in Dynasty Fantasy Football is just unheard of, and yet
I just said why I dislike Zay Flowers, and I said he's the same person as Josh Downs. That's not me saying Josh Downs is great.
That's not an endorsement.
They get out on Zay Flowers.
If someone offered you Zay Flowers for Travis Etienne, would you take?
I would
the
say
trade?
no. I would say
wait.
Wow.
I am so stupidly out on Zay Flowers right now because of the offense he's in and the way that they use him that my value of Zay Flowers is so stinking low. It's ridiculous. I would take the 206 for Zay Flowers right now. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even over exaggerating. Obviously, you can get more, but that's how low. I think Zay Flowers is just. It sucks because of the offense he's in. I think if he's in a different offense, we have a completely different conversation. But I don't think they use him the way that you want him to be used, and he's in an offense that's just not passing relevant.
What does Cam hate more, Zay Flowers or getting woken up by Norman at 2:30 in the morning to go outside?
Norman, it's not even close. But he's my dog, not my child. He's my dog, not my child.
It's his child. We're just learning about.
But I don't hate Zay Flowers. I hate the situation that Zay Flowers is in and the way that they used him.
And that's what it is, right? We can't throw out enough numbers and statistics to justify this. Sometimes you just have to watch the football and recognize that this offense just doesn't breed the necessary success that we want to see from Zay Flowers to get this Jackson Smith and Jigba type leap. Because you know what? Seattle threw the ball so freaking much this last year where when DK Metcalf misses time, of course you're going to get a breakout from Jackson Smith and Jigba. And frankly, coming out of the draft, we all thought Jackson Smith and Jigba was going to be the better product than Zay Flowers, right? We all knew that coming out. So this we shouldn't be waiting for this kind of a leap when the offense just simply can't breed it. It hasn't shown the capability to breed it. It's when you got the big dog Derrick Henry who's going to get 20 rush attempts per game. It's not going to happen for Zay Flowers. That's where I'm at. You got a low end wide receiver too, and you can choose what you want to do with that. If you can shoot for higher upside, I think with a Luther Burden or in a Emeka Egbuka, or again, grab that running back depth and take your favorite running back in this class, because they're probably going to provide you similar outcome to Zay Flowers. You're moving laterally at worst, it feels like, with those guys. Ty, I know you chimed in with a few comedic comics, a little bit of comedic relief here. Anything that you want to add on to Zay Flowers, put a bow on?
Yeah, Terry McLaurin or Zay Flowers. I'm kidding.
I was going to say I would take Terry in a heartbeat.
I'm gonna take Terry.
Well, if you're in a win now like you guys are, you would absolutely take Terry.
Well,
Anyway,
even if I'm middle of the pack.
Yeah, Terry's old though. But I
29?
still would take Terry.
29 is
I'm
old.
taking
Like, listen to yourself. No, final thoughts on Zay Flowers. Like it's a very similar kind of opinion to CJ Stroud, like and George Pickens. Like you can like the player,
Yeah.
but you just have to understand that there's a difference between liking the player and liking them as a fantasy football asset. And there's no signs of a breakout. If a breakout happens from Zay Flowers, we will gladly admit that we were wrong because there's just no signs of that happening. So, I think it's I would high key recommend moving Zay Flowers for some draft capital if you're wanting to do so.
There's nothing I love more than being wrong on a player that I'm ready to be done with. I would be happy to be wrong on Zay Flowers. I feel like some people like love clowning fantasy analysts where it's like, oh, you were so wrong on this player. It's like, I'm glad they're doing good, man. I'm just sitting here telling you what I'm seeing and trying to analyze it from a full picture perspective. If they prove me wrong for their success, wonderful. Oh my gosh, wonderful. I am absolutely in love with that. I'm perfectly okay with being wrong there. But again, difference between liking the player and liking their potential outcomes in fantasy football. Two totally separate things. They're mutually exclusive. That's all we got. We're going to be back later this week. We're going to talk about 6 players that you should actually be looking to trade your rookie picks for. So we're going to flip the scale. We're instead going to talk about some guys that we are willing to push the chips in on with our rookie picks to go out and acquire them. So again, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and turn on that notification bell as well so you know when that episode is coming out, because we're bringing you Dynasty content all off season long. Before you know it, redraft season is going to be here. I know I'm saying that on we're recording on Sunday, February 16th, and you're watching this on Tuesday, but pretty soon it's going to be redraft season, and you're going to want to be here for redraft season fantasy football content as well. So hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell as well. Join the fellowship. We would love to have you aboard. 3 dudes who love talking fantasy football with you all. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Lucas Wenzel, Camelot FFF for Cameron, Tyler _Platt for Ty. You can follow the fellas accounts as well. FFL is on X, DFFL is on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook, and the good old TikTok. We'll see you all later this week. Stay safe, stay healthy. Deuces.